Hey, everybody, coming up on your weekly COVID update. We have totally remixed it. We are having a men's panel discussion in honor of Men's Health Month. I'm your guest host, John Scott. Let's go! Hey, good evening to everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where it is that you are watching this. My name is John Henry Scott III, and I am married to your normal host, who's always here, the lovely Portia Scott. She is my wife. I love her so much, and I'm so fortunate and so blessed to be able to stand in for her today and kind of facilitate this panel in honor of Men's Health Month. So what we're going to go through today is we want to initially start with right now. Where are you tuning in from? Comment down below. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Where are you at? I know there's a lot of folks who tune in from Georgia. There's some folks who tune in from Atlanta, California, but just let us know where you're tuning in from. How about we do that? And while you're doing that, we would also want to know where we start everything with a moment of gratitude. Asking the question, what are you grateful for? I'm going to kick off and I'm going to jump in there first. I am grateful, as always, whenever I get an opportunity to have a husband take over, I am grateful for my wife. Hey, Paula, what's going on? I'm grateful for my wife, grateful that I get the opportunity to kind of just step in here and partner with her as she does what it is that she does. So what are you grateful for? Comment down below. Let us know what it is that you are grateful for. While you're doing that, we see some people tuning in. We see somebody, I think that was Ayana coming in from Decula. We see Rosetta coming in from Texas. We see Magdalene coming in from Atlanta. Y'all keep on coming in, share this broadcast, invite people. It's going to be a very informative, very engaging, and we like to make it as interactive as possible panel discussion. So as you know, my wife never does this alone. She has assembled a cast of what I call mighty men who are smart, who are intelligent, who are quite humorous, but most importantly, here to kind of partner with you on this journey. Magdalene says she's grateful for a sound mind. Ain't that the truth? Ayana says she's grateful for her husband celebrated 24 years of marriage. 24 years of marriage. That is amazing. Congratulations. Nicole Tunes, my sister from the West Side, is grateful for life, family, and good health. It's going to be a fun show. So let's start bringing in our panelists right now. First up, we have coming all the way from the other side of town, Atlanta, that is the one, the only Dr. Donovan Christie. Doc, hey. Come on in. What's up, Doc?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure. You know, I'm so happy we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is men's health.
Yes.
So getting ready to get into it today.
It's going to be a good one. Let me tell you guys, fellas and ladies who love us and support us, I've said in a couple sessions around Doc talk about men's health, so this is going to be good. Doc, what are you grateful for? Tell us what you're grateful for tonight.
Well, you know, we just have, I'm grateful for technology. This is a different spin. Why? Because we've been having these Zoom meetings, family Zoom chats. So every Sunday at 4 p.m., my kids call in from, one lives in LA, one lives in Colorado. And we basically, we're able to communicate through electronic and see each other, see our expressions and share with the joys and the sorrows of the week. And it's just a wonderful thing to be able to have that. So kudos for technology this week.
I love that. It has brought the world closer together. I appreciate that. So in addition to Doc being on the panel, I am bringing in one of my favorite persons of 2020 that I've had the great opportunity of being able to connect with, and that is the one and only Martinez Sellers. Come on, Marty, where you at? How are you?
I am well, Pastor. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing
Doc,
super
good
good
to see you.
Hey, Marty.
So, gentlemen, Listen, I'm excited because I'm normally on the other end of the screen watching it. Now I get to come to the party,
Yes,
So,
yes. The men are in charge tonight.
Let's go. Hey,
My brother from the West Side, huh?
Boom. Hey, so Marty, what are
Yes,
you
sir.
grateful for?
You know, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I've had an amazing opportunity these past couple of weeks to talk to young millennial men who are really opening up, especially during this Black Lives Matter movement. And we've had real discussions about mental health, where they can get involved with, and just being able to have these discussions with these young men. I am too excited about that because too often we allow too many circumstances to prevent us from having real heart-to-heart conversations. And the way these young men have been opening up has been great. And I'm grateful that they look to me as a mentor and ways of help pushing them to their next level. So I'm grateful for millennials.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that is so important. I'm a parent to a millennial, right? And so those of us who have children who are millennials, we could understand that. But one of the things that my son sent me a text the other day, since it's Men's Health Month, I might as well talk about the health of a relationship between those men and their fathers or the surrogate fathers that jump in. And so one of the coolest things that I think we can kind of connect to that African proverb where it says it takes a village to raise a child. One of the things that I'm seeing, and Doc, this connects with what you were saying with technology, is I believe that village has become a lot more tangible, right? Where we may not have had access to certain wells of wisdom or information, we now can get that. So major props to you all, what you do in your daily lives, and major props ahead of time for what's going to happen today.
Yes.
So, as we get ready, I want to just recalibrate around what tonight's going to be. We are always going to be committed to getting you the latest information on COVID, but we kind of want to pivot and lean in just a little bit more around men's health issues. And so we're going to discuss that from a physical standpoint, but we'll also discuss that from a mental standpoint. And what my hope and my objective is that you'll be able to walk away with some tangible handles, some tangible tools and benefits that will help improve the quality of your holistic life. And so let's get right into it. Let's go. So as we start, I want to come to you, Doc. Just because I've said in a lot of, a couple of your sessions around men's health and always blown away, right? And always walk away with some good pointers. I've even made a couple appointments, glutathione and things like that, right?
Yeah,
so when we start thinking about men, and Marty, maybe you can kind of jump in to this as well. When we start thinking about men in general, what we know is that there's this apprehension for men and doctors. It's almost as if men are like, either we're too busy to go to the doctor, or we are reactive. We wait for something to happen, and then we try to show up at the doctor. Or I don't know if it is our ego and our testosterone and our machismo, that keeps us away from the doctor. So I as we kind of level set and go into our planned discussion, I want to lead in with that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there is this perceived psychological or ideological chasm between men and doctors, whether it be on the mental side or physical?
Right. I think what we're seeing today is the disparity coming because, one, we have not trusted when it comes to our physical health, our mental health, systemically. That's why what we're seeing happening even today with this whole Black Lives Matter movement, because we have not been dealt with fairly on the mental health side. We definitely have not been dealt fairly with on the physical health side when it comes to police and all. So our guards are way up. And then I would also say that because of what we have bred us to believe who we are as men. So men don't cry. Men, we tough it out. You don't need to go to a doctor. Just put a Band-Aid on it and put some alcohol on it or what have you, and just suffer through it. So we've been taught these things until it's a lot of times it's so late in the game till we're left with very few choices had we been proactive instead of reactive, and having these conversations just with men opening up and talking just like this. I think it's going to make a huge difference. We as men can no longer be silent as it pertains to our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
I love that. I love that. You know, there's a saying that says it's easier to or it's better rather to prevent a fire than to have to fight a fire, right? So Doc, I'll toss that same question and sentiment over to you.
And I think that's why it's important, that, the Bible says that you should marry, you should have a spouse, because together you guys become one. And, I can tell you most of the men who come into the clinic are men that's been prodded and pushed or encouraged nicely by their spouse for them to come in and get a preventive health check. Now, because men have on their shoulder, they're supposed to be the breadwinners, right? They're supposed to be the supermen, and they're stoic about their symptoms. They don't want to be complainers. They may say this or that, but they're not going to be the ones who are saying, well, I need to go to the doctor. Whereas women, just traditionally, they're more the caretakers from the medical aspect. So they're the ones who typically encourage their spouse to come and see the doctor, at least get an annual checkup, at least that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's true. I can tell you, I take my wife with me to most of my doctor's appointments, and I'm telling you, she go there, Doc, you would be so proud. She has a full list of things, and I want to say, only thing hurt are my legs, girl. You asking about my thigh, my back muscles, everything, but it's true. But I think that it just speaks to the nurturing nature that they have, this mothering aspect that they have. So
a wife is a good thing.
Hey, I'm trying to tell you, and I'm taking favor. Hey, let's go.
Come on.
Shout out to all the women and the wives that's holding us down while we hold you down. Listen, thinking about that mindset and that approach towards just Marty, you mentioned just about trust. Doc, you connect that to some of the physical paradigms that we have, and thank goodness for our wives that kind of push us there.
Right.
The output of that is a certain result, right, from a physiological standpoint. And so as we start thinking about diseases that are impacting men of color, and just men in general in America, there's a list of 10 of those. Now, can you kind of give us an overview of the top 10, rather, or some of the primary ones?
So, the most impactful diseases that are causing death, let's say that in Americans, and this is across the board, both black, white, doesn't matter your ethnicity, but heart disease is number one. And when people think of heart disease, they're thinking of, well, you had a heart attack. But heart disease is really a constellation of symptoms that people get that attributes to hardening of the arteries. That is exactly what heart disease is. And it's called different names depending on where that hardening of the arteries is. So if it's in the carotid artery, the big arteries in the neck that supply the brain with blood flow and oxygen and nutrition, then that's going to be called carotid artery disease. If it's in the brain itself, it's going to be called cerebrovascular disease. If it's in the heart, it's going to be called coronary artery disease. If it's in the legs, and some people get their legs amputated, it's going to be called peripheral vascular disease. But any of the organs in the body can be affected by, quote unquote, arteriosclerosis. You can have the kidney disease, and people can go into renal failure from it. You can have a variety of nerves that are impacted by poor circulation and hardening of the arteries. So number one is heart disease, and that comes from primarily age is something you cannot control. As you get older, your vessels are going to get older. But there are so many modifying lifestyle risk factors that we have in our control. Why do some people live to 110, 115, and they don't die of a heart attack, right? Because they must have done something to prevent heart disease. Heart disease is about 60 to 70% of all deaths.
Mm.
And that includes cancers is number 2, and all cancers. Number 3 is injuries, especially in men. We have a lot of high risk jobs, so operating heavy machinery, which you can have accidents, doing constructions, which you can have accidents, motor vehicle accidents. We tend to have more than women because we tend to be more aggressive with driving, and we take more risks and more chances. So injuries is the number 3 cause of death in men. Heart disease, cancers, injuries. We can go on down the line, but I think I'll stop there and just let you absorb that for a while.
Yeah, that is a lot. And Doc, I'm thinking of our audience who will watch this as we start thinking about heart disease, as we start thinking about cancers. I know one of the things that you've talked about a lot on this program is the triad, right? And so if we try to couple that with some of these top diseases that are killing men in general, that puts us at risk, how can, for the sake of this discussion, what are some of the things that we can do as a preventive measure that every man should be doing?
So the short answer to that question is the triad. Proper nutrition, and nutrition alone is an hour discussion in terms of what you should eat and how it should be prepared, where it should come from, genetically modified versus completely organic. That's a completely discussion that we can get into a little bit here, but just for brevity. Right. So we have good nutrition, exercise. You have to get the body. We have over 500 muscles in the body, and those muscles were made to move. So sitting around a desk for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours per day, that is not good health. Sitting is not good health. Because they've done research. You shouldn't be sitting for any long period of time. We're all sitting right now because we're in a conference, but you really should be moving. And people who sit, like people who drive trucks, they get a lot of back problems. They get prostate problems. They get GI problems, hemorrhoidal issues. It's just structural problems. So, exercise is important. And it's not just if you have a job as a construction worker, well, I'm walking around all day. That is not exercise. You need to do exercise and cardiovascular exercise to work that heart muscle. When you say cardio, you're working the heart muscle.
Yeah.
And the other muscles have to be worked. And you do that through strength training or anaerobic exercise. So you have that. And then last but not least, probably more important, is the spiritual aspect of life. Because as we've discussed on this program, and Pastor, you'll definitely endorse this, we will have trouble in this life.
Yes.
God didn't put us on earth to have a trouble-free life. So it's how we address those troubles.
That's right.
How we deal with those issues. And we can let the stress come in and eat us up and cause all sorts of problems. It contributes to heart disease and get stressors and so on and so forth, sugar cravings and poor diet. So this spiritual aspect affects everything. It affects the nutritional piece. It affects the exercise piece. Because if you're depressed, you're not going to want to exercise.
Right.
If you don't have the motivation, you're not going to want to exercise. So all 3 are important.
Excellent.
Spirituality, exercise, and nutrition.
That's so good. I want to bring you in here, Marty, as we start thinking about that. That's a good connecting point, especially if we start thinking about the spiritual component of this triad. Aligned with spirituality, we understand the tripart of man, being a spirit living in a body, right? That has a soul. And as that soul is broken up between the mind, the will, and the emotions, that is your wheelhouse as a mental health professional. And so if we were to draw a distinction between the two of these injuries that we experience or that we're at risk as men and our mental health, how do we manage our mental health, knowing that, we're at risk. What happens if I
Sure.
get heart disease, or what happens if I just got to keep on living and doing this? How do I not go crazy?
That's such an excellent question. I'm so glad that Doc and I have been doing a lot more collaborating, and we have to change our approach about this whole triad, even like he's saying, the nutrition, the exercising, because I prescribe exercising when I'm doing with my patients doing mental health, because that's helping, like Doc says, getting the blood flowing and all that. That helps get rid of that stinking thinking so that you can breathe in new, fresh oxygen in that. And also the spiritual, and I go into the meditation, the mindfulness of that. And I wish that more doctors and more therapists or clinicians and psychiatrists would talk more together, because when we do this integrative approach to this, and even I would even say this step too, and pastors, because we already know that there's enough evidence out there that when people who are going through therapy are connected to some faith-based organization, that their mental health diagnosis is cut in half by being connected with a spiritual foundation as well. So just imagine if we as clinicians, mental health clinicians, and then doctors such as Dr. Christie and Dr. Donovan, and then you as well, we all got together, and now we are doing this psychological and social approach to dealing with not just, we're not calling it the whole wellness approach. It would make such a huge difference in our society, because now we're training them that we cannot just be single or mono focused, but we have this triad that we're focused on. So you're absolutely right. So when you're depressed, you have to get out of that somehow. And starting with your diet. Doc says this all the time. So that triad makes perfect sense to me. And that there is mental health, as far as I'm concerned, when we're dealing with mental health today.
You know, I think that's great, because often what happens is that there's this perceived dichotomy. I think it's a dumb dichotomy, right? By which society and culture have separated the two, right? Your physical from your mental. And then they are actually inextricably linked together, because if one isn't functioning properly, it affects the other. Case in point, we go through trauma in our life. And then sometimes what we do, we either start overeating or we start under eating, right? Or either we go through and we push ourselves so hard in the gym that we don't have proper form, or we put ourselves at risk, and then there's an injury, or we cease to exercise, we become a couch potato, we just start chilling and our lazy boy, you know, or whatever those things are. So hold on, my wife's taking a picture of it. Hey girl, go ahead. Holla at me. She was taking a picture. And so oftentimes what happens is, I think that we have to do a better job at connecting the dots between the two. Doc, I've got a question, because we talked about some of those top injuries that we are at risk of. If we want to be looking out for some of the symptoms, what would those things be? Because we're saying there's somebody that's watching right now that say, you know what, I might want to start thinking more seriously about this, because we can use them to help charge us into the right behavior. And the reason why I asked that question is because I'm a man, right? And sometimes I've got to see it crystal clear and plain before I take action. I don't move in the space of fluffiness and ambiguity, right? But if somebody tells me, if you do this, this is going to be the result. And we've heard that over and over again. And I think that sometimes what happens is that there's this undercurrent of symptoms that may be present in our life right now that we may be ignoring, because this information has been void or absent from our ecosystem of communication. And so if we start thinking about those injuries or those diseases that a lot of men are at risk of, what are some of those risk factors, right, that we should start thinking about? All right, should I stop drinking? Everybody says, should I stop drinking? Should I smoke less weed? Should I should I become a vegan? Should I?
Is this before or after being diagnosed with depression?
I'm just telling you what happened, you know. So from a medical perspective, what are some of those things that we should be aware of? You know, risk factors.
Doc, your mic is on mute.
Okay. Yeah, it's raining back here, and I didn't want you guys to hear the shower pouring actually out here. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't interfering with the program. But can you hear me now? Pretty good.
Yes,
sir.
Okay, great. So, you know, I mentioned that heart disease was the #1 killer, and it's responsible for over 60% of all death in men and women. So it is that big a deal. When you look at the charts, you know, heart disease is way up here, and then the next thing is that literally about 20% of that. So that's when you get cancers, and then you get the rest of the things, and it trickles down into your graph. But heart disease is definitely #1. So the question would be, how do you prevent heart disease, and what are the things that we're doing that's putting us at such risk? The biggest one is smoking. So if you smoke, that is the #1 risk factor for hardening of the arteries. The tar and the formaldehyde basically damages the blood vessels. It creates free radicals in the arterial system, and those free radicals bounce around. They're charged oxygenated species that bounce around and damage the intima, the inside lining of the blood vessels, and causes damage. Then it mounts an inflammatory response, and then you have cholesterol plaques that go inside that and develop plaques and hardening. That's essentially what happens. So you have to stop smoking. If you have high blood pressure, so anything that damages the lining of the blood vessels is going to contribute to hardening of the arteries. So high blood pressure is bad because you have this pressure now inside the blood vessels that's pushing against it and creating damage that way. So uncontrolled or untreated hypertension is the second big thing. Diabetes. And what comes with diabetes? Obesity. Type 2 diabetes. When you're at least 30 pounds overweight and you have truncal obesity, which is the tire that, you know, we normally develop around our belly if we don't do things about it, that fat, those fat cells are inflammatory. The fat cells will then cause you to develop diabetes because there's insulin resistance. And I don't want to get too technical, but essentially having a tire or having excess body fat produces disease. And those fat cells, that inflammatory mediators that are in the fat cells, contribute to #1, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and cancer. Just by being 30 pounds or more overweight. So the key is you want to maintain your weight. If you're going to go overweight, don't make it more than 10, 15 pounds at the max, and then you can play within that range. But the minute you're over 30 pounds or more overweight, you're looking at all the bad sequela of eating badly and not exercising and not managing your stress.
Wow.
So the three most important things I talked about. You know, sedentary lifestyle is a big risk factor. So if there are people that I meet every day, new patients will come in and they don't have an exercise program. They don't chalk out 30 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week for their own body to get that physical activity. And that's like, it's like walking around with a loaded gun pointed directly into your head.
Wow.
You need it. You really need it. You need it for your mental stability. You need it because of the hormones that's produced when you exercise, the endorphins, and the lowering of the adrenaline that occurs afterwards. You need it. The benefit is huge.
Wow.
Wow. Doc, you mind? Because you said something that was really important when you're talking about smoking and those type of things. Because when I have a smoker that I have as a client, and you're seeing the smoking and overweight too, one of the first things I'm going to say is, why are you smoking? Because 9 chances out of 10, you're dealing with some unaddressed stress, anxiety, things that you can't release. And men, if we have that big fight or flight. We're fixers. We like to fix things. Bob the Builder. We're not Bob the Builder for a reason. I can't build anything, but that's a whole nother story. But in that, when we can't fix that thing, it creates this anxiety. It creates this worry. That creates this a lot of times depression and anger in that. And so when I see a smoker or someone that's drinking excessively, I'm going to just come straight out and say, what's on your mind? What have you not resolved in your life? Because it's starting to affect you physiologically as well.
No, Marty, that is so good. One of the things that I was going to try to do is I get this opportunity to try to link together the two from a biblical standpoint. This is probably going to be the only scripture that I do, right? There's a proverb that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so as Doc was sitting and was talking about that, and I think about the work that you do, and I think about the current climate that we are in right now, but the current climate that we're in right now is particularly as men of color isn't really new to us, right? It was James Baldwin who said to be Black and conscious at the same time is to be in consistent, trauma all the time and enraged consistently all the time, right? And so as I start thinking about that scripture, hope deferred makes the heart sick, is what the scripture says. It makes the heart sick. Right. How do we, from a mental standpoint, go in and how can we as men, so physically we can go out and we can exercise, we can walk, we can do those things. And I'm thinking about the triad, Doc, that you talked about, right? The nutrition, the exercise, the spirituality. And I kind of want to lean in there a little bit more because I believe that the health of the soul, the mind, will, and the emotions is absolutely critical. Yes. And what do we do? What have you seen just in your experience in dealing with clients over time? What can you offer to us as men that would help us to have a healthy soul management regimen? What does that look like? Because we have, everybody got dreams and hopes, right? But sometimes when we are living with the system that is built, not necessarily in your favor, then that hope is often deferred. And the truth says that it makes the heart sick. And so we kind of lean into maybe the smoking or the drinking or maybe not wanting to exercise, not really caring about our temple. But I do believe that there's some underlying connections there. And so, Marty, if you can speak to that, if we want to have a healthy soul regimen, where can we start?
You have to first start with realizing and recognizing that you need help, and it's okay. One thing we have failed to realize as men, that we need help. Women have this natural thing already built into them. They will get their good girlfriends over and talk and cry and support and all that. But where do hurting men go? Where do men who feel hurt, but we have to mask it, because we have to suck it up. You just been hit in your chest. Suck it up. You'll be all right. I don't know if y'all I've been watching that Michael Jordan Last Dance. That thing has been amazing to me, and it's speaking up to so much of his psychological matters as well, about how after that game, after his father had died, he just lost it in there. We need to be able to lose it sometimes in the safety of other men, so that we can say, you are all right, brother. You are all right, young man, and build in some mentorships with that's going to help us along. I realize that at my age of 53, my job is now to mentor these other young men behind me, share with them my faults, share with them my fears, share with them how I got through this. Because if not, I always say we have don't judge me today, the soda can syndrome. And that is just, we get shake, and the slightest thing crack, we explode all over everyone with that. So one, we have to have some mentors. Two, we have to not be ashamed to say, I'm seeing a therapist, or I'm seeing a life coach, or a counselor or something, so that we can get all of that off of us with that. And as we're now coupling that with Doc is saying the exercising, and I'm not doing fast food, which is killing us with that. I'm not self-medicating, because weed is a lot of times self-medication in that. And there's a whole nother discussion. I want to talk to Doc about that later, because, you know, too many of us are self-medicating because we don't have proper access, or we don't think we have access to mental health facilities and mental health therapists, and even docs, you know, people like Doc that we have on the line. But we have to, I say this all the time, speak up, speak out in order to live.
I love that. I love it. You know, it's so interesting. It's fascinating. One of the things that I do when I get an opportunity to serve men and talk to men is I encourage them to find your safe room. Yes. And what that is you've got to have a place where you can explode and nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to try to point the finger and look at you different and all those things. Otherwise, you will erupt like a volcano, and people, often those who are closest to you, will be on the brunt of that, and they didn't have nothing to do with the issue most of the time. You know, so I fully agree. I fully agree with that. Thank you, gentlemen. Doc,
if I could just add one quick thing.
Yes, you can.
Marty's comment. You know, what I see with people who become addicted to tobacco or alcohol or drugs, whether it be cocaine or marijuana or heroin, it's their release, it's their outlet. So they're using their problems, they're kind of soaking their problems up by getting into this realm, but that realm is an unhealthy realm. What they need to find is a positive, healthy way of getting rid of those stressors. And a big part of it has to do with spirituality. You know, if you truly believe and have faith that things are going to work out, and that you're not in control of anything or anyone but yourself. It's how you deal with it, because these things are going to happen. And then if you have a good relationship with the Father, then you can say, well, God, your will be done. And you let it go that way. If you say, well, I'm not going to worry, then you don't worry. But how many people can do that? Because they may even say it and then still go out and worry. Once you say, okay, I'm giving it to God. You have
but Doc, can I jump in here real quick?
Yes.
I am 100% in agreement with you. I think a lot of us struggle with, since next week is Father's Day and we're going to be off. First, we have to, we have to stop painting this notion of deadbeat black dads.
Come on.
And so many of us struggle with spirituality because God is our Father.
Come on.
Now, the part is because we've struggled with our natural father, and so many of us are dealing with our own abandonment issues, our own hurts from our natural father. It's hard for us to connect with the spiritual father, but we have this amazing opportunity now to change the dichotomy of that, change the whole perspective of that, and say, listen, your physical father may not have been there, but we still have time to build that relationship. I grew up in a domestic violent household. For 16 years, I saw and watched my father beat my mother and felt helpless in that. Was he a good provider? He was an amazing provider. We didn't have to want for anything physically. When it was good, it was real good. But when it was bad, it was real bad. And the church kept saying, he's a good man. I'm not questioning if he's a good man. He's beating us all up in the house. What are you going to do about that in that regard? So as a result, I had to suffer with a lot of passive aggressiveness because the learned behavior I learned was make everybody happy. Don't say your opinion in that. So it took me well into my 30s to be able to fight that and deal with my own behavior. I know that I kind of went off topic with that, but in that, just talking about men as a whole, we have to deal with the whole man in that and help us get past our own daddy issues.
Absolutely.
So we have a better connection with the Heavenly Father.
Absolutely.
Then we can even do a better job with our own children. So we say, listen, you are a good father. Doesn't matter if you're in the house or not, but go ahead and step up to your role. And I'm going to be there to support you, to guide you. You can cry on my shoulder, and it does not mean that you're any less of a man. And I'm going to help and walk through this with you.
Absolutely. Marty, here we go.
All right.
Yeah, you know, it's so true, right? I'll speak to my own story, and I actually grew up similar to that, right? I didn't have a very close relationship with my father up until the time I was 39 years old, right? I'm 39. So from the time I was 39, I turned 39, and there was this massive reconciliation that took place. But for a long time, there was a lot of pain. So I may have been healthy physically, right? I can go run, I can do exercise. But in my soul, there was this hole, there was this pain, there was this frustration that existed there. And it was interesting because it would often be lodged in a place, and it would only peek its head out, you know, very seldom.
Come on, Pastor.
So I thought, right? But I had major issues. I wouldn't let nobody get close to me, meaning that I would love people very, very well, but I'm not going to let you love me back, you know, or I'll go in and I'll serve people and take care of people. So I would take on that role as a father. And if you couple that to me being a pastor, connect that to the call and the anointing on my life, then I'm great in that aspect, but I didn't know how to be fathered, right? And it wasn't until maybe about 10 years ago, I was sitting with one of my counselors, and my counselor, you know, was talking, you know, counselors don't do nothing but prompt you to listen to yourself. And so I was talking, and then I was listening to myself, and then I had this revelation. It's like, oh my goodness, my relationship with my daddy is impacting my relationship with my Heavenly Father. You know, and so you are so right that there's this connection between the two. And oftentimes what happens is that surrogates are absent. And so we are not afforded the opportunity to really get a picture of what healthy fathers look like, other than Dr. Huxtable, Carl Winslow, or somebody else that we've seen on TV or admired from a distance, which is the opportunity that we have as men, which is the opportunity that we have right now to connect the dots and to stand in our kingship and to cover our sons and our young men, whether they come from our loins or not. I think it is critical. It is necessary. And what I've discovered as a pastor is that you cannot effectively take the hand of a man and drop it in the hands of Jesus without nursing his wounds. Often there are wounds that he doesn't even know are there.
Right.
So it comes all the way back to creating this safe space, creating this space where men can just exhale, where they can just talk. And then if we can do that, then we can get on to the triad, right? But right now I'm hurting, I'm wounded, and I have no picture, no framework of what this should even look like. So I think that's so true, Marty. And I've seen that in my own life. So what I will tell you, let me circle that thing back up. With the restoration, my life has gotten better, right? Walking through forgiveness and seeing this incredible thing come to pass, I am a better man in my soul and also physically as a result of that.
Yes,
so that's
I
good.
agree, most definitely.
Yeah, that relationship between the son and the father is crucial for every man.
Yes.
And, you know, you look up to that person, and because you want them to guide you, especially, you know, just out in the world. And you can't just go out there or that's what happens to many of us. We go out there on our own. We're not covered. We're not covered by that paternal protection. And so we do a lot of things that sometimes it's out of the fact that we just want attention, you know, from that person. So,
Absolutely. I love that.
hence leads to a lot of the struggles that we have as
Yes.
men, because we don't have the opportunities are out there, but we don't even know how to say,
Yeah.
hey, Pastor John Henry, I'm hurting. Hey, Doc, I'm hurting. And I'm just not physically or spiritually, I'm mentally hurting too. So what can we do together?
Yeah,
This is a great discussion.
That's so true, because it's necessary and it's needed, and it speaks to the holistic of our health as men, right?
Yeah.
Doc, I want to pivot just a little bit, and I think we'll come back here. But I was looking through the preparation for this, and really it made me think about my daddy a couple years ago. He was in the hospital and he had prostate cancer, but he had some surgery there. And my daddy's so funny. God bless him. My daddy said he didn't want to have the surgery because he was concerned that his penis wouldn't work no more. That's what my daddy is amazing and my hero, and I love him so much. But that was his concern. And so what happens is that I would assume that is a belief that's floating out there with a lot of men. So they won't go get a prostate exam. And so you talked about one of those massive diseases being cancer. And I immediately start thinking about prostate cancer and colon cancer and types of cancers that are really killing men at a rapid rate, because they either go undetected until it's stage 4 or it begins to spread in other areas. So can we talk a little bit about that prostate health?
I definitely want to get into it, but the number one cancer, Pastor, is lung cancer. It's still responsible for more deaths than prostate cancer.
Wow.
So the way you don't get lung cancer is simple, right? Because 95% of people who get lung cancer are people who engage in tobacco use. And whether it be chew tobacco, smoke tobacco, whatever, the tobacco actually causes cancer. There's different types of lung cancer. And it's not just lung cancer, because you can get oral pharyngeal mouth cancer, you can get esophageal cancer. Everything that the tobacco debris, the stuff, the carcinogens that are in the tobacco, it can cause cancer. It increases the risk of colon cancer. It increases the risk of stomach cancer. It increases the risk of prostate cancer and bladder cancer. Every cancer is increased in people who smoke tobacco. With marijuana, it is also, people think that marijuana is that much safer because it's getting you high with the THC, but marijuana is worse in terms, you don't have to smoke as much when you smoke marijuana to get the same disease. Marijuana, somehow it's intensified with that. So if you smoke 10 blunts in a week, that's like smoking pretty much 10 packs of cigarettes.
Wow.
For that week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now somebody ought to tweet that.
Come on. Now you didn't help me, because we deal with that. For my patients, that is.
Essentially, that is the most preventable cancer, are tobacco-related cancers. But now prostate cancer. A lot of people don't know what they need to do to prevent that. But why are Black and brown men at much higher rate of getting prostate cancer than white men? Number one, we tend to be more stressed, right? More financial stress, more domestic issues going on. So stress, like I told you before, stress will reduce your immune system, suppress your immune system on the long term, and weaken those fight or killer cells that are there to get rid of cells that go awry. Because it's happening right now. As we're sitting here, the cells that divide in our body are dividing, and they're going to be mistakes. For every billion cells, you're going to have maybe one that's a mistake. The immune system, they're armed with M16s, and as soon as they see that one cell that breaks off and starts going amok, they get rid of it. So, your immune system in terms of preventing cancer is crucial because as we get older, that whole
Hmm.
mitosis and division of cells, it becomes a less effective or less resilient. And so we tend to get cancers more as we get older. Prostate cancer is more common in men in their 60s. 60s. Granted, if you get it when you're younger in the 40s, it's unfortunate, and it typically is going to be more aggressive because the younger you are, the cancers are going to be more aggressive. Men in their 60s, 70s, they get prostate cancer. They can live with prostate cancer for 20 years until the number one cause of death gets them, which is heart disease.
Wow.
So they may have so they may have prostate cancer, but they don't die of prostate cancer. It's a
Right.
smoldering type of cancer where it's slower growth. The more aggressive ones occur in men in their 40s and 50s, where it then metastasizes outside of the capsule, and then hits the bones. Then you get bone metastasis. It can go to all over the place, and that's not how men die from prostate cancer. But generally, it is not a virulent cancer. It's not like lung cancer, which when you get that, the chance of you dying is probably 60, 70%, or pancreatic cancer, which the chances of you dying from that is about 90%. So there are different, more virulent cancers that will take you out much quicker than prostate cancer. But to prevent prostate cancer, because you can live with this, what are some of the things that you need to do? Number one, keep your weight in check.
Hmm.
Your weight. I talked about the fat cells and how the inflammatory mediators come on. That is the biggest thing that you can do. Keep your weight within a 10-pound of where it should be. Don't let it go 30, 40 pounds over. Walking around with a tire doesn't help you. It doesn't help you across the board in any of it. Heart
Put
disease.
some context around the tire in case the people in the back don't know what it is.
A tire, well, we call that in medicine truncal obesity, where you have the love handles that are on the side and you come around. That is where that fat, right, and the pushing out of the belly, they call that visceral fat.
wow.
And that fat is inside. I'm not talking about the subcutaneous fat. The fat that's inside around your organs, that is metabolically active and it's creating havoc in your body. So you really want to keep your gut, your waist size. If it's above 38, you're at risk for heart disease. You're at risk for diabetes. You're at risk for high blood pressure. You want to get your waist in check. That is a good quick measurement of what you need to do. Keep your waist below 38. Ideally, a man's waist should be between 34 and 36, 32 if you're small, 36 at the highest. It should not be above 36. For
Wow.
most men, I'm talking 90, 95% of men. If you're big like Shaquille O'Neal or you're a big linebacker, those guys typically have smaller waist size anywhere, unless they're a center where they have these huge bellies, and when they get older, they run into problems as well.
Wow. Jermaine Lovelace said, Lord help me. Look, we've got a question. Paula had a really good question that I want to bring in here. Paula's question is, my husband is in his mid-40s. He's had kidney cancer twice, and his father had it too. They have a teenage son. And so is this a type of cancer that can be hereditary?
Yeah, well, kidney cancer can definitely be hereditary. They have clear cell. There's different subtypes of cancer. And some of them are definitely hereditary and some of them are sporadic. But I would, Paula, I would need to know what particular cancer your husband got. If it's renal cell carcinoma or clear cell type carcinoma, those things tend to have more of a genetic predisposition than other cancers.
Excellent. Doc, another question briefly. This can be for you and you, Marty, as well. We had a woman by the name of Portia Scott leave a comment, and Portia's question was, as women, how do we have the conversation with the men in our lives about going to the doctor or to get help for their mental health? I don't think that's about her husband, but I think she asked that for her girlfriends.
I hear you. I hear you. I think it's just having that conversation, like you said. Oftentimes, the women in our lives are the ones who are definitely the ones who influence us to go to the doctors, who influence us to go see mental health. Mental health is a lot more scary for some reason for people and men, because one, we don't understand what it is. Like docs, listen, like you said earlier, my job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to kind of help you listen to what you're saying, examine your own life, and come up with your own decisions about how you want to live your life. My thing is, I come and say, who are you? And what do you want to achieve? Why are you here? What am I doing here? And to help you explore those questions. We don't bite and anything like that. And just, try out. Just like you find a good physician and all that, you got to find and try different mental health people. I'm not the best therapist for everyone. I know my lane. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm bad at. And I'll tell them, listen, that's not my expertise. I will gladly refer you to someone else whom I trust. But it's just having those conversations about that and helping that. That's what I would suggest, Portia. Doc, what would you suggest?
Well, I think that guilt works well. If you're
not guilt us, Doc.
you gotta, the thing is that my daughter-in-law, Brianna, she basically said, well, here we are. We have 2 kids, right? If you want to do this and mess your life up and not practice a good, healthy lifestyle, then, all you're gonna leave me alone as a widow with these 2 kids, and that you can't rightly do that, right? So that works on the guilt conscience. They don't want to be alone by themselves. So the whole thing is that you're gonna want to live a healthier life to preserve your life,
right?
Or for longevity. It's good to get older together. So that's pretty much what I think. You just have to let them think about how their lack of health will impact the entire family and how it may actually burden them. Yeah. If you get a stroke, then your wife has to take care of you, right? I mean, so I think that's a good way. That's
so if all else fails, ladies, guilt them and just tell them you gonna die and you gonna remarry with all the insurance money. That'll get them.
Wow.
Hey, quick question, because I want to try to connect the dots between stress and the conversation, Doc, that we were having around like some of the cancers, specifically colon cancers, right? And getting a colonoscopy. That brings stress to a lot of men. When you hear the word colonoscopy, whether they know anything about it now, all you hear is somebody got to touch the back door, right? So what can you offer us, Doc, to help us as men to be proactive at getting colonoscopies?
Well, yeah. If you eat red meat and you eat a high fat animal fat diet, you're at risk for colon cancer. If you smoke, you're at risk for colon cancer. A colonoscopy is probably the most painless procedure that a man can go through. Why? Because you're sedated, and the tube, when the tube is inserted, you are actually.
See, that's the part, Doc.
You're asleep. You don't feel it.
Henry, that's mental now.
It's over. So,
I got to go this year.
Well,
I'm 40 this year.
But if I think it's so important that we get these screens, because Black men and Black women, we are at higher risk of colon cancer and every other cancer you want to name it. Breast cancer, we're at higher risk.
Yes.
Prostate cancer, we're at higher risk. So getting your screens. Now with prostate screening, it's up in the air now because they're saying you shouldn't do a PSA, which is a prostate antigen blood test that will go up if the prostate is inflamed. The problem is not specific. It can just be inflamed from you sitting down and driving all day and you get a prostatitis, or it can get inflamed just because you're getting older and the prostate will swell. So you're doing a lot of unnecessary procedures if, in fact, the PSA is elevated. So they're recommending not doing it as a screening. Now, if someone presents with symptoms of Portia, let's say they're getting up in the middle of the night more than once, then they should get checked. I check every man over the age of 40. I do a PSA on them every year, despite that, because especially in my population, you know, where I have a lot of African American men, and I have a lot of men who've come down with cancer, with prostate cancer. They need to be screened.
So we've got a comment from Daryl Mitchell that said the colonoscopy wasn't bad, but that prostate exam, he's currently screaming and running away. And so I know him. I'll connect you with him to schedule a prostate exam, Doc.
Yeah.
So we've got another question from Nicole Toombs. A great question there. So within the frame that we were talking about, you know, the colon cancer and prostate cancer, she was just mentioning what are some of the symptoms. I think you spoke earlier on when we were having a discussion around cancers, but if you can kind of just circle back to address that, Doc, I think that'd be great.
The symptoms of colon cancer, let's talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we do screenings. You have to do a screening colonoscopy, because by the time you're getting symptoms, that little polyp, that little growth that's gone into the lumen of the colon, where you could have just gone in with a colonoscope and clip it and cure it, is now embedded into the lining and the core of the colon, causing now rectal bleeding or liver metastasis. So you don't want to wait until you get symptoms of colon cancer, because it's too late at that point.
Wow.
So when we do a rectal exam and we get a little bit of stool and we test that stool for blood, because it's still brown stool, but you don't really see the blood. It's called occult blood, hidden blood. We test it. That's an indication for colonoscopy if it comes back positive, because now that little polyp is breaking off and some blood is going into the stool that's not recognizable by the human eye. It's not bright red blood. So you don't want to have symptoms. You want to get screened. And it's recommended you get a screen every 10 years. If you're Black, you want to start your screening as early as 40, but 45 is what's recommended by the Gastrointestinal Association. At 50, everybody else gets screened. But Black men and women needs to get screened 5 to 10 years earlier. And if you have a history of colon cancer in your family, that you want to get screened 10 years before that person, the age of that person who got cancer, colon cancer. Prostate cancer is going to be very specific. Nocturia. A nocturia means that you're getting up in the middle of the night to pee. Once you start doing that, you need to be screened. Period. Even if it's over one time. Frequency. If you feel like you have to go to the bathroom on a regular basis instead of 3-4 times a day, more like 10 times a day, that's frequency of urination. That should be checked up. And those are the two most important symptoms of a swollen prostate, which doesn't mean you have cancer, because 90% of those men will only have benign prostate swelling or hyperplasia, but it still needs to be worked up. And once you know, well, it's just that, then you can rest assured and go on with your life.
Because Doc, what I'm seeing here is even my, 53. They're giving me the less invasive ones where I can just get a stool sample in the privacy of my own home and send it in the mail to them through my insurance company. And that has been the best thing ever. So I have not had to have anything invasive like that. But it's so good. It's a little stool sample and keep it pushing.
They do now recommend that. It's called a Cologuard test. And what it's doing, Marty, it's checking for cancerous DNA.
Right.
So when that cell has changed its morphology and now it's creating an adenocarcinoma or
Yes.
any other type of cancer, the number one being the adeno, it'll
Mhm.
pick up that DNA in the stool. So
Mm.
Yes.
that's a non-invasive test.
Yes.
You have to do that every year
Yes, I do.
versus
Wow.
versus doing a colonoscopy once every 5 to 10 years.
Mhm. Interesting. So this is a very engaging discussion because our viewers are chiming in. So I want to go to
Yeah.
some of the comments. We've got a comment here from Thomas Ship, who said that he had a colonoscopy for blood in his stool in 2015. And this follow-on comment says, it turns out his ex-wife was buying reduced price meat. Like on good times. Like on good times. So we're grateful, Thomas, that you don't have colon cancer. Stay away from the reduced price meat. But Doc,
Or the
that
meatloaf that
that
Wanda was bringing.
that's going to connect to the quality. This brings us to the quality of food that we are putting in
Yes.
our bodies. Can you speak to that?
Yeah,
Because sometimes people say, I only do all organic or I only do all grass fed. Or what's the science behind that and the benefits from a physiological standpoint?
yeah, the science is compelling. I think that when you realize that the United States of America, we can feed the world with our technology. And so, for instance, chicken. Most of our chickens are in farms, and we feed them grains that are laced with hormones, and so you get these big
Mhm.
sized chickens. You can tell a chicken when it's been pumped up with steroids or hormones, because all hormones are steroids, right? People you can use those terms interchangeably. Um, so, chicken that are pumped up and they're not organic and not fed the foods that naturally they should be eating are going to be bigger, and they're going to be it's going to not be as nutritious.
Mm.
It's going to probably taste the same, but it's not going to be as nutritious. Cows, they shoot those cows up with testosterone to make them bigger. They shoot them up with prolactin to make them produce milk. Those cows that have been identified, you're going to be producing milk. They keep them in a pregnant state by shooting them up with hormones to keep that milk flowing. Estrogens, prolactin is shot up. So we're doing a lot of things that are not natural anymore, right? That's just in our meats. If I
Wow.
get into the grains, I mean, what we're doing with our genetically modified grains, they're taking one grain, one plant that say that plant came up nice and looks good and was bearing good fruit. They take that, then they genetically modify that, changing the DNA, and then create a stock of seeds that all are the same. So it's like cloning. That's
Wow.
what genetic modification is, where they're changing. And then sometimes they crossbreed things. So you have
Mhm.
fruits and vegetables that didn't occur naturally. These
Mm.
things are occurring in the
Mhm.
laboratory, and then they're planting them, and then we're eating them. You tell me these fruits and grains and vegetables that are raised that way, they do not have the same nutritional content
Mm.
as the natural, quote unquote, organic. Organic just means we didn't do anything to it. We let
Right.
it grow. We didn't do anything. We didn't add any negative things to it. We didn't modify it in any way. We just allowed God to do his work.
Mm. Mhm.
From the tomatoes that we grow in our backyard, the tomatoes that you're getting in the supermarket, it's different. It's
Mm.
different because of the way it was raised.
Mhm.
So the
Interesting.
quality of the foods now with red meat, if you're eating a high fat meat and that the fat has hormones in it, yes, those hormones, if they put it in the cow, it's going to go into you when you eat it. And
Mhm.
so you then putting yourself at risk for eating these grade D meats that you have taken into your body, creating disease in your body. You
Wow.
are what you eat.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely spend the money to
Yeah.
get the food if you can.
I love that, Doc. This speaks to another question that I'm going to speak to here from Brianna. Brianna has a question here in the comments that says, why don't insurance companies support us getting tested earlier when the numbers show it's necessary? So this comment showed up when we were talking about cancer, so forth and so on. But I believe that there is a connection to what I call this economic ecosystem, especially as it relates to health, because at the beginning and the end of the day, the common thread that runs through most every industry is economics. And so you're able to go and modify meat and food because you're thinking about the economics that's connected to it, right? Then you're thinking about the political connections to it when we start thinking about the insurance companies, because there's this ecosystem that is built and designed for profit. And so oftentimes what happens is that insurance companies may not, from my experience and my studies, really go in and support that. And unfortunately, who's impacted at a higher rate is Black and brown communities. And the reason why I try to connect that with the conversation that we were just having is because sometimes what happens is that people are saying, I cannot afford to buy organic. This economic ecosystem that exists again. So what do we say, Doc, when people come in and see you and say, yeah, I know I should eat this way, but I cannot afford it? Or Marty, even hearing people aware of this information and wanting to eat better food, but it's either I choose whether I buy this great value, that's the Walmart bread. If y'all don't know, that's the Walmart bread. Either I buy this Walmart bread, or maybe I shouldn't have said Walmart. I buy this certain brand. Those statements are the statements of John Scott and not Portia Scott Media, FYI, whoever want to try to sue us, right? That's John Scott LLC. But either I buy this brand that is not organic, but it allows me, look, this is a big old pack of meat that I can get for $5 versus a small pack of grass-fed organic beef for $10. Economically, based upon the ecosystem, the way that it is set up, we know that marginalized groups, for the most part, are Black and brown communities who cannot afford to eat that way. So this is a two-part question, right? Or two-part statement. On one end, there's this medical piece. What do you say, Doc, as a doctor, or the advice of people who cannot afford to eat some of the healthier options? And then Marty, what do you say when they come and see you, or you come across cases because economically I feel like my hands are tied when I want to do the right things? It's either rent or this. I'll throw it out there for you two professors. Let's start with you, Marty.
When we come to that, it's really about helping all of us make wise choices with what we do and how we do it. Even the wise choice of whether or not some people say, I can't afford to see you. There are some cases where I know they can't. So part of my job is helping them to navigate through some of that. But then I will also challenge them, I just come straight out. What's your weed money? What's your alcohol money? If we're talking about eating healthier, if we're talking about making right choices in that, let me help you, because what I'm going to do is help you get to the next level. At least that's what I want to do in my desire in helping you with this therapy. And if that's on your treatment plan and goals, because I don't want to infuse myself, but let's make some better choices about things. Living healthier, being smarter, being mentally conscious and everything. Those are some intentional decisions that we have to make. And I would say that successful people and healthy people are intentional people. We can be intentional about everything else in life, I was going to say intentional about going to the Shake Club, intentional about everything else, but let's be intentional about what we do and how we value our mental health, our physical health, and our emotional, spiritual health as well.
I love that. How about you?
Yeah, well, I really think that if they can't, and I tell my patients this, you can't buy the organic, then get the stuff that's there. However, for fruits and vegetables, let's say, you should make sure that you wash them properly, because
Yeah.
If they're not organic, they're going to have herbicides and pesticides, which are also cancer causing. So you want to get a little bottle with vinegar and water and wash your fruits and your vegetables. It's better to eat that than not to eat the fruits and vegetables at all, because fruits and vegetables are God's food. They put it on He put it on the earth for us to eat and for us to heal our bodies with. When it comes to meat, I basically they just need to stick to primarily chicken and fish. Don't eat a lot of fatty red meats,
Hmm.
and trim the fat. Most of the toxins are going to be in the fat of an animal. That's where it goes. That's where it harbors. It stays in there. The fat tissue is unhealthy tissue. So you want to definitely clean your non-organic meats properly. My wife always she will always wash our meats in salt water first, just to kind of get off the germs that's on it, and that's as best as you can do when it comes to meats and fruits and vegetables.
No, I think that's great, Doc. You know, one of the cool things that my wife would be really proud of is, well, I'm proud of her, is we've just recently started a garden, right? And so in our little garden box, and we start growing our tomatoes. And so she's been just tending to the garden. I mean, I would get in trouble for this, but I just been having her out there just watering that garden and making sure that she take care of all of our vegetables.
Right.
Ah, no, but we've been trying to grow our own, and you'll be surprised, right? What you can do for a little bit of money. And so I just think it's basically
Yes.
about doing the research that you can so that you can contribute
Yes.
to long-term health that's sustained over time. I've got a comment that came in from Asher that I want to read, and then I want to move to our final questions. And thank you so much to our audience for hanging in there with us as we have what I believe is this needed conversation. Asher writes, communities of color are no different than any other community in that everyone wants to live a healthy life, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. However, the challenge for communities of color and healthcare providers alike is defining what a healthy community looks like through the prisms of stigma. So here's the
Hmm.
question, Doc and Marty. Do you believe that there are racial misdiagnoses for Black men when it comes to Black men? Are
Well,
there a diagnosis there? Let's start with you, Marty.
I definitely believe there are lots of mental health diagnosis, misdiagnosis in Black men, and I'll say this as a Black male therapist, even when we're talking about the social worker field as well, we represent 1% of the field. Again, as a Black male therapist, I represent 1% of the field. So it's oftentimes difficult to share what your experience is with someone who has not lived in your shoes or has not walked in your shoes. So a lot of times we will label, for instance, I used to work with a program and it was a young Black man and he just was, angry. He goes, what, do you two think that I'm oppositional defiant, ODD? One of the wonderful things we like labeling our Black men in school. And I said, no, I don't think you're oppositional defiant at all. I think you're depressed and hurting because of your family conditions. How
Good.
you treat someone who's oppositional versus someone who you treat who is depressed is night and day. I treated him like he was depressed and got him out of that because he wasn't oppositional. He was angry at his life situations. And I told him, you have every right to be angry at your dad who has abandoned you. You have every right to be angry with your life and the teachers who have discounted you. And so I'm using that as an example that there are so many of our young Black, brown, and Black and brown young men starting in the elementary level who have been labeled and misdiagnosed. And that label can continue and go with them all throughout their middle school and their high school years. And for most Black men, young Black men, they will then say, I am going to go, since you labeled me this way, I'm going to feed into the label you have defined me as. So since you think I'm a monster, I'm going to live out that monster before your eyes. And so we have to be careful with labels, and also get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get someone who looks like us to diagnose us so that we know how to do it, and don't just accept that one diagnosis.
That's a tweetable
Get some
moment.
question.
That's a tweetable moment. Get somebody who looks like us to diagnose us. You know, Marty, as you were saying, that there's a fascinating book for those of you all out there that are watching that enjoys reading. There's a book by Joanza Kunjufu called The Miseducation of Black Boys. And it is a tremendous read that really aligns very much to what it is that Marty just mentioned.
Love that book.
Fantastic book. Doc, I'd like for you to speak to that from a medical
perspective. I think for the medical diagnoses, you know, these are objective numbers. So, you know, if somebody has diabetes, they have diabetes because we check the sugar and it's high, or the A1C is high. You know, if they have high blood pressure, because they have high blood pressure. But I see in my 30 years of practice, I see a lot of Black men and women misdiagnose in the behavioral health or the psychological realm, because a lot of that has to do with so much, you know, it's not as objective. There's more subjectivity in it. And what you see is that, for instance, they will label a white person more with depression and psychotic features versus schizophrenia, which basically says that you're crazy. If you're Black and you're having psychotic features and you are depressed, they're not going to diagnose you with that. They're quick to diagnose you with schizophrenia.
Come on, Doc.
And put that label on you for the rest of your life. Right. And you see that a lot, you know, in the behavioral health or the psychological realm. But things like cancer, if you have you know, it doesn't, if we diagnose it, I would definitely follow through with it. And there are things you can do to definitely get treated from the medical perspective.
Yeah, I like that. The science is oftentimes, I think, the challenge, if there is any misdiagnosis there in terms of the physical aspect, my gut, and I don't have the stats on this, is that sometimes it's due to perceived bias that's there, similar to why we see African American women are at a much higher rate to die given childbirth, not necessarily because of the science being wrong, but sometimes there's this implicit perceived bias that may or may not exist. We're not sure. So, Doc, I appreciate you for that feedback. You know, I want to take a moment as we prepare to wrap up and speak to this moment here. First, I want to acknowledge my wife for kind of using this platform that she has and the incredible resources that she has with her co-hosts. We have Dr. Donovan Christie, Marty Sellers, who have just become part of our Scott family community, you know, and it is a great. You've got our executive producer, Daryl, on the background that many of you all don't see. But I want to take a moment to say this right here, is that I just appreciate you as a husband, really kind of helping to push and drive her vision forward by offering your time, your expertise, your experience, connecting with the audience. It adds tremendous value. And even on a night like this, tonight, I know that what was offered here in terms of just the counseling from a mental health standpoint, from the questions that were answered, from the health challenging us to exercise and to lean in on that triad just a little bit more, is that these conversations are often absent among men, particularly men of color. So for all the men that are tuning in from all around the world and all around this country specifically, thank you for taking some time. And to the women that's tuning in, I hope you got some notes, and do like Doc said a few minutes ago, guilt us into doing better. So as we get ready to bring this particular broadcast to a close, I want to go in and I would like to kind of bring up our panel on their final thoughts. Marty, I know you've got an incredible acrostic that I'd like for you to take a minute, you know, and just kind of summarize and speak to us as men so that we can leave here with some practical things to do? And then, Doc, I'm going to ask that you do. What are your final thoughts? If you've got 1 million men that's tuning into this broadcast, what do you have to say? So let's start there with you, Marty.
Sure. Since June is men's health month, I just have a simple acrostic. I love acrostic. So M stands for just being mindful, and your whole thing of meditation. Since we're talking about mental health, being mindful of that, and that is just men. We got to stay grounded in all that we do, and making this a part of our daily routine of mindfulness, of meditation. E stands for exercise. We got to get that exercise in there. Like Doc said, if we can get 30 minutes in a day, just whether it's walking, jogging, lifting, doing some light cardio or what have you, we got to do that. And N stands for, listen, notice changes that happens within your mind, your body, and your soul, because those are all two telltale signs of what's going on around us. So pay attention to those things. Those are my words of wisdom for tonight. Just men, that whole acronym of men.
Love that. Thank you, Marty. And then let's jump over to Doc. Doc, what do you have for us?
Yeah, for the men 30 and above, we talked about exercise, we talked about spirituality, but I want to just talk a little bit about nutrition and give you a few key pointers to keep you healthy as you age. Number one, do not overeat. The companies, the fast food chains,
Right.
they market to young men. They get them into these eating habits of eating lots of fast foods or just too much food. You don't have to eat. You eat to live. You don't live to eat. All right. So
that's a tweetable moment. Let's go.
So don't overeat. That's the number one thing. If you don't overeat, you're not going to put on the excess weight. Number two, fish. When you're going to eat fish. You can have chicken as well and some red meat, but make the red meat rare. That means one or two times a month, rarely. Chicken, you can do that maybe a couple of times a week, but try to eat fish, lots more fish. The fish that's loaded with omega-3, it's good for your brain, it's good for your joints, it's good for your heart. Eating more fish. Incorporate more foods cooked with tomatoes and use olive oil, which is going to help to protect your prostate. And especially if you're African American, there's a much higher risk. We want to make sure we're getting that in. Drink good green tea. Green tea is a wonderful antioxidant. I recommend eating a lot of that. Manage your stress appropriately and take your supplements. Because if you cannot afford organic foods that have much more minerals and vitamins in it, and you're eating regular food, then you need to take supplementation to make sure that you're not going to develop deficiencies. If your nails become brittle, if you get pitting of the nails, that's a sign. If your eyelids, if your conjunctiva becomes pale, there are physical signs of nutritional deficiency. If you get fissures on your lips, you have deficiencies. So if you're getting rashes from foods that you eat, you may have deficiencies. So you want to make sure you take a good multivitamin. I strongly recommend it. And supplements for your prostate, for your heart. There's a lot of good things out there that you should be taking on a regular basis, taking good probiotics to help with your gut health, which is crucial. And that's for a completely different day, which I can talk about gut health because it's where your immune system works.
I love it. I love it. Thank you both, gentlemen. And so here are my final thoughts. Every man needs a safe place. And so I would encourage you thinking about this triad, right, of exercise, nutrition, spirituality, thinking about how we manage our soul. It is so much easier when we have a safe place. And that safe place isn't just for us to go and to excel, but it also is a place exhale. It is also a place for us to go and excel, right? So this safe place for a man is twofold. It's a place we can go and exhale, that's safe, but it's also a place where we can go and excel because we've got accountability, we have community, we have everything that we need in order to grow into the man that I believe that God created us to be. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into our panel discussion tonight in honor and recognizing Men's Health Month. In terms of just a real quick announcement, next Sunday, we will not have an episode. Next Sunday, we will not have a broadcast. And the reason why, it's Father's Day. And my lady gonna be celebrating me. You understand? She gonna be doing it. She gonna do a good job. I know it. And I also know that we're gonna celebrate these fine fathers who are also on our panel. And so to the men, happy Father's Day in advance. You matter. You are important. Thank you so much again. And also be sure to follow us and connect with us. As you know, you can do that by texting a number that's going to show up there. You text "wake up" to 31996. Again, text the phrase "wake up" to 31996. That's the way that you can be in the know with everything that is going on with Portia Scott Media. And I will tell you, I've been on the back end as the primary investor, and there are some exciting things that's just happening. And I will tell you, you want to be in the know. It's an exciting time to be a part of what it is that my wife is doing, and I'm so pumped and proud of her. And so we're getting ready to go. And so we never like to end the broadcast without saying this, and it is our declaration, and it is simple. Waking up is automatic. Showing up is intentional. Today, we will show up. Peace out. God bless, guys.
Thank you.